You know, for something like 2,000 years, there's one book in the Bible that has absolutely fascinated and, let's be honest, terrified people: the Book of Revelation. When you hear that name, you probably think of prophecy, right? Some kind of scary vision of the future. But what if there's a whole other way to look at it? Let's get into it.
I mean, think about it. In movies, in books, in sermons, we're always told that Revelation is this blueprint for the end of the world. You know, a play-by-play of all the plagues, beasts, and epic battles that are still on the horizon. Okay, but what if we've got it all wrong? What if we've been looking in completely the wrong direction this whole time? What if the real key to understanding this book isn't about our future at all, but is actually buried deep in the past? Well, today we're going to unpack a theory that just might flip everything you thought you knew about the apocalypse completely upside down.
So, to even begin to understand this new idea, we have to start with a huge problem, a real head-scratcher that has been bugging scholars and theologians for centuries.
All right, so here are the two big ideas, side by side. The common view, the one we all know, is that Revelation is a roadmap to the end. But a scholar named Noah Robertson Platt came along with a pretty wild theory. What if it's not a prophecy about the future at all? What if it's an allegory about the beginning of Christianity? Specifically, the Easter story. And here's the big snag, the logical problem that kind of gets in the way of the whole future prophecy thing. The book itself says it's revealing things that must shortly come to pass. Shortly. And yet, here we are, 2,000 years later, and, still waiting. Platt says that huge time gap isn't just an awkward detail. It's the biggest clue we've got that maybe, just maybe, we're looking in the wrong place for answers.
So if it's not about the future, then what is it about? Well, this new theory says the book is actually a super complex code. And the key to cracking it, it's a story most of us already know by heart.
To really get this, we have to talk about a literary device called an allegory. It's basically a story that's working on two levels at once. You've got the surface story, all the wild visions of angels and monsters. But that's just a symbolic illusion. The real point is the deeper, hidden reality that it's all pointing to. So what's the hidden reality in the book of Revelation? According to this theory, it's the Easter story. Simple as that. It's not a prophecy about what's going to happen. It's a symbolic retelling of historical events that already happened: the arrest, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus.
Okay, so what's holding this whole theory up? Well, it's built on a few core ideas. First, the author, the Apostle John, was supposedly an eyewitness to all this stuff. So he wasn't writing about the distant future, he was writing a proclamation. Theologians call this a kerygma, about what he'd already seen. And this is the important part, he chose to use this complex allegory as a really powerful way to tell that story to the people of his time.
All right, that's a pretty radical claim. So where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Well, the theory says the first major clue has been hiding in plain sight this whole time, right there in the very first verse.
Okay, check this out. On the left, in Revelation, the book kicks off by saying it will show what must soon take place. Now look at the right, from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is telling his disciples what's about to happen to him in Jerusalem, his betrayal, crucifixion, and resurrection. And he uses that same kind of language, talking about what will soon happen. Platt argues this is no accident. He calls it the master key that unlocks the entire code of the book.
And the implication of this? It's huge. Because if that connection is real, it yanks the entire context of the book out of the far-off future and slams it right down into the past, around 30 AD, smack in the middle of the Easter story.
Okay, so one parallel is interesting, sure. But for a whole book to be an allegory, you'd need to see a bigger pattern, right? Well, this is where the theory's most powerful piece of evidence comes in. It claims there's a sequential map hidden right in the middle of the book.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. The claim is that the core chapters of Revelation line up, step by step, with the events of Passion Week. So, Revelation 16, that's Christ's suffering. Chapter 17, his death. Chapter 18, his burial. And chapter 20, the resurrection. The argument is that this isn't just some lucky guess. It's a deliberate, intentional structure built by the author.
I mean, think about it. For a sequence that precise to show up right in the heart of the book, the argument is that there's no way that's a coincidence. It has to be an intentional design, meant to mirror the most important story in the Gospels.
Okay, so seeing the big picture map is one thing, but how does this decoding actually work on the ground? Verse by verse. Let's zoom in and do a little case study on one chapter, Revelation 7, to see how this method actually plays out. So the whole idea here is to peel back the layer of illusion to find the historical reality underneath. For example, the vision of angels and the four winds in Revelation 7, that's linked to a similar passage in Matthew. The mysterious angel ascending from the east gets decoded as the high priest Caiaphas, and that famous sealing of the 144,000. In this theory, that's not a literal number of people. It's a symbolic picture of the Sanhedrin Council meeting to, quote, protect Israel by plotting against Jesus.
And to back this up, the theory points to a key linguistic clue: the fact that the specific words angels, four, and winds show up in both Revelation 7 and Matthew 24. Well, that's presented as a deliberate breadcrumb, a textual link left by the author to connect his vision to what Jesus had already said.
And yeah, what about that huge number, 144,000? Everyone always wonders about that. In this interpretation, it's not a literal number of people saved at the end of time. Not at all. It's completely symbolic. Think of it like a numerical code for the Jewish council. It's built from numbers that were super important to ancient Israel. You take 12 for the tribes, and you square it. Then you take 10 for the commandments, and you cube it. It's all symbolic.
Okay, so this all leads to a really big question, right? If John just wanted to tell the Easter story, why do it this way? Why use such a complicated, confusing, and honestly kind of weird code? What was his motive?
Well, the proposed answer is a little-known heresy from the 1st century called Docetism. And the core belief of Docetism was this: Jesus wasn't actually a real human being made of flesh and blood. He was a spirit who only looked like a man, kind of like a ghost or a hologram.
So suddenly the allegory makes sense. It becomes this brilliant literary weapon to fight that idea. See, you can't solve John's puzzle. You can't crack his code without constantly going back to the Gospels and focusing on the messy, physical, real-life details, the suffering, the blood, the burial. It's designed to force his readers to engage with the humanity of Jesus, reinforcing a physical truth to fight a spiritual lie.
And this completely reframes what the word prophecy even means in this book. So when Revelation says something like, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, the theory argues that doesn't mean predicting the future. It means the very soul of prophecy is the testimony, the eyewitness account of the historical life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It's a mission statement, not a crystal ball.
So what does that leave us? With a pretty mind-bending question. If this theory is right, then the book of Revelation isn't a scary book about a future we can't control. It's an incredibly clever celebration of a past that shaped the world. It shifts the whole thing from being a prediction to being a proclamation, and that really matters. So, could it be? Could the real key to one of history's most mysterious books be a 2,000-year-old heresy, a code written to win a long-forgotten theological war?